All right, hold on. I'm like I said, I want to try and maybe I'll insert this somewhere in a weird cut place, but I don't even know what rabbit hole. I don't remember what rabbit hole I was going down the other day, but I found this scorpion. It's called Hotentata tamulus, or the Indian red scorpion.
Jeez.
It's venom. One of the symptoms that you get when you get stung by this thing is priapism. And I was like, wait, priapism? And I had to even click the link because I was like, I've heard that word before, but I thought it meant your dick staying hard for a really, really long time. That obviously can't be it, because this is getting stung by a scorpion. It wouldn't cause my dick to be hard for 4 hours. So I clicked on priapism. Sure enough, this fucking scorpion, if it stings you, it makes your dick hard for like 6 hours.
Where do I find this scorpion? Where exactly was this located?
It's called the Indian red scorpion, which is like a total miss. Like, if you have a scorpion that can sting somebody and it makes their dick hard, and you call them an Indian red scorpion,
you can't call it that. There's got to be something better.
Yeah, the fucking dick hard scorpion, obviously,
right? Like
just off the top of my head, you know. I don't get it, man. Or maybe it's because Indian guys are so horny, you know.
Show Babs and Vegeta.
Welcome back to another episode of From Right to Red. My name is Craig.
And shalom, my DEIs. This is Paul.
Oh, man.
I can't not say it now. Shalom, my DEIs. There's one person that will appreciate that joke.
There's at least one listener that will absolutely love that joke, for sure.
/ previous guest.
So we have an awesome episode for you today. We're going to talk about Boeing, go a little bit into detail for people that haven't been paying attention, and of course put our typical left-wing spin on that story as it unfolds. On top of that, we're going to talk about P. Diddy a little bit. P. Diddy's in the news.
Well, yeah.
Got a small little update on UAW, but first, what I wanted to talk about was an unfortunate situation. We're constantly watching and updating our viewers on the situation in Palestine. So yesterday, probably not when you're listening to this, but the other day, you may have noticed that there was a strike that took place in Gaza by the IDF on some aid workers. They work for an organization that brings food into places like these, and they were struck by an IDF missile, and of course everybody online immediately is freaking out about how it was actually an IED. I saw somebody in threads online yesterday that was looking at the corpses, looking at photos of the corpses and saying there's just no way that this was a strike by the IDF. It was clearly an IED because based on like certain parts of their body that were scorched. And it's like, number one, like, you don't know what you're talking about, because now the IDF has actually confirmed and said this was our military strike. And number two, like, how grotesque of a person are you that, number one, you have to go and find a way to defend your favorite team by looking at anything, but also how disgusting are you that you're doing it while like staring at burned bodies of aid workers? Just
and
absolutely horrific.
The only part of that, I was a little frustrated as well. I feel like a lot of people were forgetting at first that there was also another person who was Palestinian driving the vehicle that they were in. And I think it was just because people knew it would tug more at the heartstrings. Like, here's a foreign person trying to help, but I didn't see enough mention of, like, the driver was a fourth person who was Palestinian.
Right.
And it's kind of been left out. But, like, either way, it's still clearly an attack on civilian people trying to help and bring aid, which is very illegal.
Very illegal.
Unless you're the U.S. or Israel, I guess.
And it gets even more illegal with some news that came out today. Israel took a page out of the U.S. playbook, and they did one of the signature. It looks apparently, this is allegedly, reporting is still coming in. I don't want to jump the gun, but places like I believe the Intercept is where I read it, or maybe it was the Guardian, are now reporting that it wasn't just a single strike; it was a double tap strike. And in fact,
thanks,
it
Obama.
was a triple tap strike. Yeah, Obama. We've been doing double tap strikes for a very, very long time
Obama
in this country.
made him famous.
Obama made him famous for sure. He was the master of the drone double tap. For those of you that don't know, a double tap strike is when you strike a target and then you wait for aid or medics or people to come in and try and rescue any survivors, and then you strike again.
Which is
and Israel,
very illegal.
Very, very illegal.
Very
it's
against humanitarian
disgusting.
law.
It's
and
just like
makes you feel icky too. Like,
yeah, like
even beyond the law, it just feels bad.
Exactly. Like, how can you even like? I will never understand the ability for some of these people that are in power to in a position to make these choices that don't feel like an inner evil completely annihilating their soul when they're doing stuff like this. So apparently what happened is the first car was struck with a precision missile, and then they waited for a second car to start driving towards them, struck that car, and then they waited for a third car to come in and try and help both of the strikes that had just happened, and they struck that car as well. And then they just kind of gave up, stopped sending aid, which makes perfect sense, you know?
Yeah.
So
it's sadly not the first time or the last time that we're going to see that happen. No. And I wish that would be more clear to people. Like, maybe the side consistently going against, like, international laws we've created, maybe they're not someone we should give money to. Maybe they are not doing good.
Right. And that's like, you know, a lot of people will, that I speak to, especially on the right or the center, will give me grief about caring so much about this conflict and saying things like they've been fighting each other for thousands of years, which, to be clear, is completely untrue. Number one, like, the Middle East was never a constant source of conflict. There were large periods in history where it was a peaceful place. And in fact,
yes,
like a place where some of the greatest scientific and mathematical discoveries were taking place. So that's like not true at all. And then number two, like, we are actively using Israel as a proxy in this war. They are our face in the Middle East. We have full control over that government. So anything that they do is like stamped by us. And that's why I care about it, because that's us. That's me. That's my money that I pay every year in taxes going to help this.
Yes.
You know, and it's absolutely disgusting.
Like, I can't stop everyone who's going to want to kill someone else, but I do not want any part of it. Like, I don't want any of my money at all being involved in that. But either way, they're still human beings, and I still, no matter what, don't want an innocent human being dying because some other dude just wanted to, or they want their house, or, you know, I want their land, so I'm just going to kill them. Like, to me, that just feels wrong. And as long as we're going to have the opportunity to watch it happen, I don't know that there's a part of me that can't care about it. Like, I'm going to feel something for those people.
Right. Pretty straightforward.
And that area also, in case anyone forgot, before 47, Christians, Muslims, and Jewish people, all three lived there. And when the first Intifada happened, they burned Christian churches just like any Muslim mosque. So Americans need to remember that. When it comes down to it, they don't care. They will burn a Christian church down the same as a Muslim mosque. So I don't know why you're thinking they love Christians.
How many times do I have to say this since October 7th? This is not a religious conflict.
No.
There are Christian Palestinians. There are Armenian Christian Palestinians. There are all kinds of people that live in Palestine. And Paul's absolutely right. Historically, they were able to live together and in relative peace. Of course, there were squabbles because there are different cultures and that kind of stuff happens. But they weren't murdering each other the way that they are right now in a full-scale war until Zionism came into place. And Zionism is just a settler colonial project. Easy. Yeah. Straightforward.
And if you really want one episode, we can even go into that history of how Jews are really just one of the 12 tribes of Judah. They're Judah. They're not the whole Israelites. They're like, we could break all of it down if anyone actually is interested in that and clearing up those facts. Right. I don't want to, but we can.
All right. So next, I wanted to do a quick little update on the UAW, and I think the big stuff we're going to see with the UAW, if there's a shot, like Paul, you and I have talked about this in the past, but I think both of us agree that kind of one of the most important things happening in the country from the perspective of our project, the left as a whole, would be the union drive that's been happening since 2020.
And the UAW in particular for that class organization of working people, like it's an amazing place to start. And there's a long history of them being involved with things like that.
Right. And what's happened, I think, through like the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, almost all the way up until, maybe 2010 and on, with unions was, there was this huge middle class drive to get people into education and into like high tech or more, higher education type jobs. So union concentration dropped down, and it also class character of unions changed significantly because, when unions were first gaining prominence in the United States, it was a lot of leftists, a lot of communists outright that were in unions.
The U.S.? No
I know.
way.
And then as people were pushed, towards these higher education jobs, the class character of unions kind of changed because the people that were left there in unions, the people that sought those jobs out, tended to be of a certain upbringing that unfortunately was kind of co-opted by right-wing politics, right? And so there's still a lot of that holdover in unions. Like if you talk to older union workers, a lot of them will still vote Democrat, but some of them will hold like really controversial takes on things.
Or near this area, you hear a lot about, well, at one point for like 10 years, it was kind of corrupt in unions.
Yeah.
And they just stick to that one little period. And they're like, well, we can't have them now.
Right. So now that class character is changing a little bit. There's a whole lot of more leftward push, especially in the UAW. And I just saw an article the other day that the UAW is actually standing and helping with some workers in Mexico that are not U.S. citizens, which is really phenomenal. And I think Sean Fain or the PR department for the UAW came out and said that, borders are not important in the union. All that's important is class, which is a phenomenal statement. It's like shows international solidarity, which we absolutely need. It's something that we care about deeply. And it really shows that the character all the way up to the leadership of the UAW has changed in a much more leftward direction, which is fantastic. So that's what I love to see that with the UAW. Yeah.
I love to see that because we need to stop just going, hey, well, we can exploit workers there. Let's move our factory there.
Right.
Like we shouldn't exploit workers anywhere.
And actually it's good for us not to, because look, like the capitalists, the people that are not working class, they don't operate within borders. Like if labor gets too expensive for them in the United States, they move labor costs to Mexico. If it gets too expensive there, they move it to China. If it gets too expensive there, they move it to India. They just do it on a dime. So all of those working class people around the world, like, they're in the same labor pool with us. They're part of us. So what's good for them is good for us.
Yes.
That's ultimately the bottom line. Just the same way that even if you're not in a union, higher union membership leads to higher wages in your industry. It's the same concept. They're all fighting over the same labor pool. So if we can increase the standards for workers and give workers more control and more agency around the world, it's better overall for the global working class. So that's something important to keep in mind.
And I think that will very nicely tie in with the big topic of how things could have been different with another company.
Yes. But before we get to Boeing, did you want to talk about P. Diddy?
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely. I mean, it was always my dream since I was a kid, like, especially when I was like 13, 14. I just wanted to live with him. And
Right.
I'm sad I never got to, because I could have had so much fun. Apparently
Like,
I could have been
just
the victim of everyone if I was the 13 in there. Everyone would have wanted me.
You want to know what's really funny? This might be like aging myself quite a bit, and we might just cut this part out entirely. But
are you about to sing a song that didn't age well from him from our time?
I was just checking a date right now. So one of the first albums that I purchased, like, myself with my own money, was when I was 13. Wait, let me check the date again. Yeah, I was 13, and I say my own money, like there was any legit way for me to make,
like, it wasn't just like your parents giving you money for chores that you did.
Yeah,
anyway.
Exactly. Wasn't my money at all. I did no
you
work
raked
for
the
this
yard.
money.
Here's $5.
I was born into a decent family, so that's the work I did. But yeah, that was one of the first albums that I bought. It was Godzilla, the album, the original motion picture soundtrack.
Wow.
And it had a song on there. Dude, don't even ask me why. I was such a little friggin' weird nerd. But
you were?
I know, right?
We both definitely still are.
It had this song on there, "Come With Me" by P. Diddy.
Oh,
do you remember that song? It's not on Apple Music. Yeah, I'm probably gonna cut this part because this is just me just rambling now because I can't find the song.
Well, if we're cutting this part, then you should also know my first purchase of music ever was a FYE, and it was 2 CDs. One was the single of Blue, the "I'm Blue Down." It was that single, and then I bought Millennium.
Oh my God.
Those were my first 2 things I ever bought with my own money at FYE, and it was like a big deal. Like,
what was your first concert?
My first concert, I went and saw Sammy Hagar with my mother. Dude, when I was maybe 13 or something, or 12. That's the first one, I guess, that stands out. I mean, when I was younger and don't remember, saw someone, but like that one, I was like 13, just, at that right age of I'm discovering more music. And my dad did not like Sammy Hagar. He liked Van Halen. And so my mom was like, "Do you want to go?" I was like, "Yeah." And it was awesome. At that age, I thought he was awesome.
Well, mine is more embarrassing for sure. I have 2 embarrassing things about my first concert. The first one was that the first concert I went to was a Green Day concert.
That's all right.
Green Day and Blink-182.
I saw almost that exact same concert 4 years ago when they redid that tour.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And I bet it was 1,000 times more fun when you went, because when I went, it was just people like with their kids, with headphones on their kids, and I'm like, this is not fun. We used to all be like punks, and it's like grown adults wearing a sweater vest holding their baby, and I'm like,
right,
what? This is what?
We're old now.
Yeah, I guess we're old.
It was fun, but like yours is cool because yours is timeless.
I mean, I guess.
I don't think Green Day is going to be, and Blink-182.
Green Day might
from now.
They might be. Green Day really did a lot for making punk pop. and
That's
destroying
true.
it. So
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, that's why I'm
destroying Punk
embarrassed
by making it pop.
Yeah.
And then Blink-182 just took it a step further and said, let's see how poppy we can make this.
Right.
So
That's
people will remember, just not in a good way.
Yeah, that's what I
They'll
mean.
remember 40 years from now, there will be like whatever the new TikTok is. Kids will be like, you remember when Green Day destroyed Punk?
Yeah, exactly. And then the second embarrassing thing, and this probably won't come as a surprise to you, but I had been to multiple operas and musicals before I had ever been to a concert.
Well, if we're counting that, then it's not Sammy Hagar.
Yeah, I was thinking I was like, well, I guess, does that count? I don't know, maybe. But
yeah, I had seen other things before that then.
I had definitely seen Phantom of the Opera multiple times, I think, before that concert. Yeah, definitely.
I had seen Phantom of the Opera more than once, but in Detroit. And then at 16, I got to see Phantom of the Opera on Broadway, which it was like, that was the thing that made me be like, oh, theater's fun, to like, this is awesome. Like,
yeah,
it can be this cool. Like,
yeah,
that really changed my perspective. Like, and of course we saw like Cats or some other shit that was going too, but like Phantom of the Opera was the one that I was like, this is what it's supposed to be. This is cool. There's suspense. Like, it's fun.
I saw it in Toronto. I don't remember what year.
Toronto has a good, they have good people in Toronto.
Yes. Their Phantom was wild because they actually, like, you didn't even realize the entire show, but they had set up a prop chandelier to fall into the crowd at one part of the musical.
That's cool.
Yeah, so it like swings down, like, oh dude, it was wild. It was a crazy show. But yeah, I found that song. If we're cutting it, I might as well just play it. You remember this song? If you remember. Skip all the nonsense.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
Can you see how a little nerd kid would like this? Like a band nerd kid?
But I didn't remember the lyrics being what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
I love the people who found the clip. I can't remember which one of his songs, but it's like essentially him saying like, I won't take no for an answer. And I'm like, that didn't age very well.
No, not at all. So yeah, I just thought that was a funny little aside that like the first album I ever purchased. I think this is like very fitting with where I am in life. Are we
back?
We're back. Yeah.
Yeah.
The first album that I ever purchased was one by what is now, I'm assuming, going to be a convicted human trafficker.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even read every bit of Diddy's thing. I immediately went for the tentacles of like,
oh boy,
who he knows.
Of course he did.
Yeah, but
it's instantly CIA. Well, at first I got really upset because we were all tracking his plane, and then people were like, actually, he wasn't even on that plane. And then I instantly was like, I hate this kind of stuff. Like, I don't want to have to dig just to find the first simple fact. Like,
right.
Like, come on. We're already making like muddy in the waters this early.
There was so much misinformation going around right off rip. It was wild, but I did find a picture. So wait, I don't want to go too deep on this because I actually feel like this could be an episode. So I won't go too deep on this, but I will say that I found a photo of P. Diddy with a business partner of his, a man that belongs to the Bronfman family. Which is pretty wild. If you don't know anything about the Bronfman family, they two of the sisters of this family founded the Nexium cult, which is pretty crazy. If you haven't seen anything about the Nexium cult, You should.
That's why I know the name.
Yeah.
I knew I had heard it, but I couldn't remember why.
Yeah. So two of them were involved in Nexium. They were like founders of it. One of those two was married to a man who used to be Gaddafi's number one political enemy in Libya.
Totally normal connection there.
And that person, that member of the Bronfman family, and her husband, who was trying to get power over Libya from Gaddafi, ended up campaigning for Hillary Clinton, who ended up getting Secretary of State when we toppled Gaddafi in Libya. So
what the?
I'm not drawing a straight line because it's not really a straight line.
No, but there's got to be more to it if that's there.
There's a wild connection there, though, that, this person who's partners with P. Diddy was involved in this cult that did, drugs, human trafficking, sex trafficking, and P. Diddy gets arrested for that same thing. I don't know. It's just, it's very interesting.
Yeah, but it's also like, it makes me want to dig because there's clearly so much there under the surface, because that's too weird of a connection to have by random, or like, oh yeah, just got the dude's number. Like, there's more of a connection.
Yeah. It's pretty wild. Like I said, I don't want to go like too deep into it, but there's also, the connection between like Nexium and the Dalai Lama and the Bronfman family and their connection to the Dalai Lama. It's just it's all weirdly connected. And, I hate to say it because I know at least one person listening is going to accuse me of,
CIA did
pinning everything on the CIA. But oh my gosh, dude, these people were all they were all fed it up, bro. And they're all next to P. Diddy. So
and it's too eerily similar to like, oh yeah, just come here, like, and how people were saying, leave your phone if you want to come into the party. And then every room is bugged and cameras, and then it's like, hey, well, I got you on camera doing this. Like, it's just more blackmail. It's the same system, which means we're not just uncovering like the top of the top at all by any means right now.
Right.
We're finding little tentacles spreading out. Can't stop using that metaphor.
That's good.
But like, it makes it clear, like, okay, so this is two big ones now, and they're not even the big ones.
Yep.
There's still a lot of work to do.
It's really wild when you think about, like, especially the part I didn't hear that specific detail about them leaving their phones, but that just means like,
yeah, that was a recent thing that I guess he had started doing in the last year. Like, if you went to a party of his, you could not bring your phone inside. Like, he didn't want people to document any of their own stuff to take out, but he could have everything you do on camera.
Exactly.
It sounds exactly like the cops. I don't want you to record, but I'll do it.
I think, what the innocent answer to that is going to be is, you're coming to, I'm sorry. Does he still go by P. Diddy? Am I saying it wrong? Am I aging myself?
I mean, at this point, just call him Sean Combs. I mean,
I know, honestly. Why do I
like,
care about
at this point? Like, is he Puff Daddy? Like, who cares? Those are made up names.
Fucking piece of shit loser. So Sean Combs, this piece of shit loser, if you think about it from like, if he
pedo Combs,
the innocent, pedo Combs, the innocent answer he's going to give about the phones is like, oh, you're coming to a party at Sean Combs' house, so there's going to be, all these rich people here that really care about their image, so you shouldn't be recording just in case anything goes down, right? Like, that's the innocent
they
answer.
Don't want to be recorded being drunk or something. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's just really convenient that also means, since his entire house is wired for video and sound, that he has whatever side of the story that he wants to tell, or whatever side of the story somebody's wanting him to tell. And I saw something about Kanye that linked to this. Did you see that? That piece of news?
He's someone who has mentioned that he thinks he's an informant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's wild.
And honestly, like, if he wasn't already an informant, he seems like the type that will flip real quick.
Right. And that's how this stuff happens. Like, look, I always tell people, and this is just me being conspiracy brain. Can I be conspiracy brain for a few minutes?
Absolutely.
All right.
I mean,
So
I'm all for it.
if you look at, in my opinion, like there's a lot of ways in which Charles Manson was kind of like a prototype Epstein. If you take his involvement with the CIA the way that I do, he was kind of like a prototype Epstein, right?
Of like where he's not directly CIA, but they're using the fuck out of him.
Yeah, and they're using it to get like into positions of like media power or elites in specific communities. You know, like Charles Manson was really plugged into Hollywood elite at the time. Like he was visiting the house of Roman Polanski, who was like the director at the time.
He was hanging out and writing music with the Beach Boys. Like
exactly. Yeah.
Like he knew people.
Exactly. Yeah. He knew people. And then if you guys listened to the podcast episode that we did about the book Chaos, you can see that, there are a lot of straight ties directly into the intelligence community from that. Right. So I see it a lot of ways as like a prototype Epstein. And now I'm seeing like in P. Diddy that it's just another version of the same thing. And this is what you see with books like the Jakarta Method, is that the CIA is very good. Like our country in general is very good at like finding one method of doing something and then just kind of like sloppily rubber stamping it all over again. And you see that from Jakarta to what ends up happening in, Operation Condor. It's just like a kind of like cookie cutter response to countries, right? And that same, I feel like that same type of thing is happening here, where it's just like, okay, he gets in trouble with the law. That's what Kanye is saying, is like, oh, I'm in trouble. He was in trouble with the law, so he had to like flip, right? So maybe they caught him doing like whatever drug trade, or maybe he wasn't in human trafficking by himself. Like, who knows? It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
They catch him doing that and they're like, all right, now what we're going to do is wire your entire house for video and sound, and we're going to let you go, but you have to roll on some people, like,
oh my God.
That's that's the way that it works,
But that's like, now that you say it like that, it makes total sense.
And it's the same with Epstein. You see the exact same, general series of events is, who can you give up? That's what it comes down to. So
the real question is, are we ever going to get to the top?
No, I don't think so.
I would love to, and just
tear everything down instead. Move on.
But the sad problem is, like from an interview I was recently watching that was older, of someone in the 90s trying to talk about how him as a child actor went through that stuff. He said it in kind of like a true but sad way, that even if we get rid of all of them, more could be born tomorrow, and you just gotta wait for them to grow up and be the abusers. Like, it's something we'll have to fight forever. It's not like we can take them down and say, all right, we're done. Like, that's a battle you'll have to fight forever.
Yeah.
So we kind of have to be prepared for that as well.
Definitely. Yeah, it's messed up shit. So
don't cut the can opening.
I'm not going to. It's like the best response to that kind of,
right? But yeah, that was saw that recently,
cold one.
And it stuck with me, because I'm like, it's true. Like, we'll have to fight that forever.
Yep.
But I'm willing to fight it forever. That's what we gotta do.
All right, so I think it's time that we move on to the big guns. Boeing stuff.
Kind of literally, in a way. They got a lot of big guns on those planes.
So I'm hoping everybody's seen in the news all the stuff that's been happening with Boeing lately, although we are recording this podcast probably about a week after the biggest news of it broke.
Yeah.
So and I'm already seeing a week later that a lot of like media spotlight on this is coming down quick. Like it's not really there as much as it was a week ago. So we want to bring it back into everybody's attention that Boeing like killed a man last week or 2
Yeah.
weeks ago.
Like, there's no other explanation other than that.
Yeah, I guess let's pull back now that we threw that out there.
He Epsteined himself.
Yeah, think about a man that worked for a company, dedicated his life to this company for decades, and made his way up to quality control. The company was fantastic about safety. So being, think about like the culture of whatever your workplace is, whatever's kind of like the most important to that company culturally ends up being like the people in those roles in that department end up being like the most important people, because so if you have a company that's focused on sales, it's a sales driven company, your sales directors are going to be like the big guys in town,
Yes. So Boeing used to have that in their
Boeing,
field.
exactly. Boeing used to be, they were about safety, quality, and fantastic engineering. So somebody that makes their way up to a quality engineer for an entire manufacturing facility at Boeing is somebody that's like serious business in that company. Like they're a big dog.
Yeah.
Right.
This dude's been around. He's seen a lot. He's been heavily involved. If you're in quality, you've seen probably all the products that you guys create, and you've worked with a lot of the people who are up higher than you, as well as the people doing the building, because you have to be talking in between them. So this dude is one of the most knowledgeable, as far as like maybe not deep knowledge, but like across the board of everything in that company. Might be one of the more knowledgeable people on that.
Yeah, definitely a generalist that kind of like understands everything from bottom to top, So he works there for decades for this company. He's in a quality spot in a company where the culture is on quality. So he's a leader in that role. He's a leader in that department. Suddenly the company gets sold. It gets like merged with some other company, right? And the culture just changes overnight, where it's now
they took
focused
all the
on
financial guys from there and put them on top.
Yeah, all of a sudden, like imagine being this guy, right? And all of a sudden, like the executive vice presidents and vice presidents above you, and the directors and all of that, they used to be quality guys. They would come from the quality department, or they would come from engineering, because those were like the two most important parts of that company. And now they're replaced with guys that were like, they're just MBAs. They don't know about engineering. Focused. They've never done engineering. They don't care. They've never done quality. They don't care. They studied for 6 years in how to make profit. That's it. Right. So those people come in and they're immediately like, okay, start cutting down as much as possible, because the goal is to increase profits. That's like their entire life is increasing profits. And I actually saw this awesome graph. I'm going to link it. In the show notes. So I got to set a reminder to do that. Otherwise I'll definitely forget. But there was this great graph that showed how much revenue, how much as a percent of revenue Boeing had spent previously, before this new management took over, on stock buybacks and dividends for shareholders. And it was just like this tiny percentage for like years and years and years and years and years and years. And then these new CEOs take over that are all MBAs, and suddenly that percentage just like shoots way up, right? So I don't know how like hard I have to spell this out for people, but when a company comes in and they take from money and allocation of resources and effort from the quality and engineering team and siphons it all over into stock buybacks and dividends for shareholders, like that is called capitalism. That is like what we do here, right? Create profits. That's what MBAs are trained to do. And look at what it has done, right? So this whistleblower goes for decades doing this. At this point, after this leadership changes, he starts trying to blow the whistle on a lot of different things that are taking place. Not blow the whistle. I shouldn't say that so preemptively. He starts trying to make to shoot problems up to his supervisor, his direct managers, like, hey, there's quality issues that are taking place that are not being addressed. And they just really kind of didn't care. So he ended up retiring early because he didn't feel comfortable working in that environment anymore. Then he started blowing the whistle on them, and all that stuff came out.
And in case people haven't heard all of those things, it's literally things as ridiculous as like, we got to get the plane out, just rummage through the scrap pile and throw it on there. Like, that's how silly it was. Not even like, oh, this is a tiny like miscalculation. Maybe it'll be okay. It was like literally slap whatever you can on there.
One of the things that he specifically had called out was the increase of metal shavings that were left all over the electrical components and wires of these planes. These planes are fly by wire now. You know, I mean, like when you do the controls in the cockpit, it's not mechanically changing anything. It's all going through these wires. So you can't have metal shavings by these wires. Like,
I mean, this seems obvious, but
it seems really obvious, but like you
I don't even know how to build airplanes, but that seems like a bad thing.
Right. It would be one thing if there was some type of like mechanical override, but like, you know, you can't have metal. Anyways,
they don't even have mechanical overrides anymore in planes.
Not in a Boeing 737.
I feel like they should.
Yeah, I just don't know if the human body is capable of turning a rotor that's like half the size of a house mechanically without a gigantic. I don't know. Maybe I'm just talking.
You've never seen me.
No, I know that's true.
I'm kidding.
Paul is jacked.
Yeah. No, it seems like there should be some type of like backup for that. Like
right.
You know, we use hydraulics to turn wheels all the time. Like there's
you're
other ways.
Right.
There's other ways.
There probably is mechanical override.
But I wouldn't be surprised if they did that and they were like, nah, this stuff's so good, we don't even need the backup.
Right.
Because it'll save us in profits.
And like for those of you that are thinking, oh, okay, metal shavings, industrial stuff, whatever, like that's low quality work. You know, they don't really need to care too much about that as long as they're taking care of the rest of the company really well. Well, I got news for you. Before any of this shit started happening, if you don't know, the 737 MAX airplanes were just falling out of the fucking sky because of shoddy software. So like either way you slice it, everywhere in the company, the quality of the output was just drastically reduced, whether it was industrial stuff, whether it was actually like building the planes, or if it was building the software that flies the planes. They didn't care. They didn't invest. All they cared about was how much money can we pump our stock with, because these people that come in, their entire incentive plan, how they get paid, is based on the price of the stock. So if they initiate a stock buyback, what does that mean? That means they're using somebody else's money, the company's money, to buy the stock, which increases the price of the stock and gives them more money. Like, why is that legal? It's insane.
I've never understood how that's like just a legal thing to do.
It's completely insane.
It just seems like it just shouldn't be legal. Like, it doesn't sound right. Like, it's just fake.
Right.
Like, I'm just fake making these numbers.
Just imagine if you worked at McDonald's, all right? And a customer came in, every customer that came in, no, let me not go that far. 22% of the customers that came in, instead of giving them, taking the money, putting it into the register, and then giving them food, imagine you took their money, put it in your pocket, and gave them food, right? Just stealing 22% of the money that came through by using somebody else's money to make a purchase, right? Like, that is essentially what's taking place with stock buybacks, and they need to be completely illegal. But I don't know, man. I'm kind of rambling now about random Boeing stuff. But do you think this guy killed himself, or?
I definitely don't.
No.
But taking a pause from that rambling, you mentioned that 737 MAX.
Yes,
that was getting that shoddy software.
Yeah.
But like, there's no way they could have known before any of them flew, right?
No. They wouldn't do that.
Not like,
That would be social murder if they
yeah,
knew.
it's almost like, wait a minute, July 8th, 2022, Boeing threatens to cancel Boeing 737 MAX 10 aircraft unless given an exemption from the safety requirements.
Oh
So,
no.
guess what happened? Do you think they were given the exemption, or do you think no one ever got the MAX?
No, see, Paul, we live in a country that cares about people, so they
Yeah, well,
definitely
show me that.
They,
Show me
they
that
wouldn't
somewhere.
they wouldn't have given them an exemption.
Give me one example, Craig.
Come on, man. Put me on
not
the
like
spot.
not like the country is us, like working class people. I mean, like
No,
the people
yeah.
running it. Show me
Yeah.
one time.
The 5 corporations in a trench coat that own this country.
Yeah, but that story to me doesn't age super well, because that was right around the time they were literally, essentially, that's them saying like, hey, you guys want your planes, which their government contracted. So like
Yeah.
the government has already invested their money to Boeing to make these. And now Boeing gets to go, you're not going to get them unless you let us skip out on safety.
Right. Insane.
So what do you think our government did? Do you think we let the evil corporation fail like capitalism says and a new one will emerge? That's what capitalism supposedly says, is like that a bad business will fail.
Yeah.
And then, it allows someone else to compete. Oh, but wait, they already have the monopoly and there's no other companies in this country to compete. So then essentially that just puts them in a corner of like, all right, well, skip out on your safety stuff, I guess, because we already paid for those bitches. Like, to think that that's how we're operating like a country right now, of like a government is squeamish towards a corporation. They're like, oh no, I guess just give us what we bought. Like, that's not the first time our government's done that. You reminded me recently of when the government was like, hey, I don't remember what company, but they're like, we want you to give everyone this broadband internet. And they were like, yeah, give us the money. And then it never happened. And the government's just like, well, all right, you can still exist as a company, though. Like, this isn't the first time. It happens a lot. But to think that that was like 2 years ago, in a month, it'll be 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And then, like, what did you think was going to happen? I mean, in what world does that make sense of like, these airplanes, we need less safety.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah, it's just crazy. Like, if you look at the way these kinds of things unfold, the power dynamics are really clear. Like, the companies have full control over the regulatory state.
Oh, the other fun part of that, at that same time in 2022, is when you get the quote after Obama does his tour as being a spokesperson for this new plane. And then Obama goes in front of them and he's like, I expect a gold watch for how many planes I sold for you. So like, it's everywhere. Like, they're all in on it. They're, even after presidency, he's in on it.
And that's the crazy thing about the 737 MAX. The wild part is that like, it sold record numbers of planes. They sold so many of these planes.
Thanks, Obama.
And they are defective, dude. Like, like straight up defective. For those of you who don't know, that don't want to like go and dig, like the problem with the 737 MAX, and I'm not even sure if it's entirely corrected yet or what.
Do you want to get into the software?
But the way that it works, like, I just want people to understand what this company is doing, because there are memos that show that the highest levels of this company knew the danger of this software. They were
intentionally tried to hide that danger
intentionally
from their
tried
own
to hide
pilots, from like the
these
people
are
flying
criminals. These are criminal people, and I want you to try and experience the fear that was taking place for these 2 planes that went down on the 737 MAX. The way that the software would work, it had one sensor on the outside of the plane that was called an angle of attack sensor. What the angle of attack sensor did was told the software if the plane was pitching up or pitching down, and by how much, right? And then the software, if it was pitching up too much, because the planes were kind of retrofitted with engines that were too big, but that's a different story.
Those are huge.
Yeah.
Those things are
It was
Crazy.
basically just a 737 with big engines. And so that led to engineering issues. So they realized these planes were pitching up too much, which would cause them to stall and fall out of the sky. So instead of doing that, they were like, all right, we're going to use a sensor, use a software to force the plane to pitch down. And when they first started testing it, they realized, like, if we roll this out the way it's designed, we're going to have to file this as an entirely new plane instead of an update on an existing design. And that would get us to have to pay a lot of money and go through a lot of FAA stuff to get it in the air. Because a new plane is different than like a tweak on an old design, right?
As well as they would then be responsible for training people. Like they would have to provide the resources to train people on this new plane as well.
Yeah.
And they didn't want to pay more money.
So they decided that, you know what, we're going to have this system that completely takes over the plane and pitches downwards. But we don't want to be regulated about it and spend a bunch of money on that. So we're going to lie and not tell anybody that it even exists. Like they didn't tell pilots that this software existed. So now imagine, you know, you're a passenger on this jet and you're going up in the air and suddenly the angle of attack sensor has an issue that tells the software the plane is pitching up when it isn't. So the plane software tries to pitch down for 10 seconds, as hard as it can, pitch itself downward. And then for 5 seconds, it stops. And it allows the pilot to try and pitch back up. Then it goes 10 seconds down again and 5 seconds up. And in the meantime, of course, in the cockpit, every single warning light in the world is going off. You know, because they didn't really
pilot's probably going, what is happening? Because he doesn't know the software exists that's doing that.
I don't know what's happening. So it takes about 6 minutes. It took about 6 minutes for this plane to go through this nightmarish cycle for everyone on board. Absolutely nightmare cycle of pitching downwards towards the ground as hard as possible for 10 seconds and then 5 seconds back upwards and 10 seconds down for 6 minutes straight. And you're looking out the window and you're seeing the horizon get lower and lower. Like, I can't think of anything more horrifying for somebody to go through. And the CEOs knew that was going to happen and chose to say, fuck it. I need some money. Right? Like,
that's America.
That's evil, dude. That's evil. And you know, I've had discussions for a really long decades now with people about human nature and morality. And when I talk about capitalism in the past, I've always talked about it as kind of an amoral thing. It doesn't really care if something, you know, if it doesn't, it's not good or bad. It just is, you know, it's just
profitable or not.
Profitable or not, right? But I think my like opinion on that is changing because I can't think of anything more evil than like looking at a memo that says like this is going to kill people basically in a horrifying way and just going, yeah, I need more money. Like that's just pure evil, dude. I'm sorry.
That's like, I don't care what point I'm at. If I'm like, you know, haven't eaten in 2 days and I'm completely broke. If someone offered me $1 million, but I got to let some planes go down with innocent people in it, I'm going to say no. Like,
yeah, dude.
And they're not even in that position. They're already like, they have more money than most of us will ever see. And yet they're still like, I want more and I'll trade these lives for it or potential lives.
And if you think we're lying, the fucking CEO just got let go from Boeing. And what was his exit pay? $60 million?
Yeah, like not a jail sentence, but here's a bunch of money.
Here's $60 million. Hey, thank you for your service, taking down those 2 planes. Here's $60 million.
Yeah.
Just wild, dude.
Utter insanity to think that this company, but like this company has a long history of forcing other airlines out of business in order to get this monopoly, which is like all of this, if we actually stood by real antitrust laws, much as I don't want it to stay capitalist, at least that could have prevented some of the evil, to just literally stand up to evil corporations doing bad things. Like, hey, you're squeezing people out in an unfair way, so
Right.
we're going to stop that. But
Right.
and like that was, I believe that was pre 1900 we passed those antitrust laws. Like,
Yeah.
and to think no one's giving a shit. Like,
yeah, it's I actually was going to say earlier that it's I want to be clear before I make this point, because people, will start coming for my commie card. All right. So I want to be clear that liberal democracy in the United States has always been in the pocket of big business, always and forever.
From its inception.
From its inception.
Who created the Declaration of Independence? A
Right.
few wealthy landowners,
yes,
who were
and they were
like
the only ones
younger
that could
than
vote.
both of us right now. And honestly, when I was the age of those guys, I didn't know shit.
Yeah. So it's always been in the pocket of big business. But at least 100 years ago, we had a regulatory state and a government that was willing to say, like, whoa, enough is enough. Like,
yes,
we can only go so far, and start breaking up companies, standing up to companies and saying, this is too much. The 50s, 60s, they saw the Great Compression in our wealth, and that came from a lot of those government policies that were saying, like, enough is enough. We got to break this. We got to break this stuff up. When are we going to get to that point? Because now I honestly, I don't think I'll ever not believe that Boeing didn't kill that guy.
oh, there's no way. And now we're like flashback 100 years. We were literally like breaking companies up and telling them what to do a little bit, like kind of roughing them up a little bit as far as governments go. Again, don't pull my card here. I'm not saying that they still weren't in the pocket of big business, right? But it was significantly more humane. At least there was pushback from another side.
Exactly. Yeah, there was some oppositional force taking place. Now it's literally just like roll over and take it. It's I don't know what to say. Now we're at the point where Boeing is just killing a guy, and people will say to me, "Oh, there's no reason they would have killed that man because he already blew the whistle."
Yeah, but he was about to have a case that actually would hurt them.
Exactly. That was my point. Is like, okay, we've had Edward Snowden, we've had Chelsea Manning, we've had Julian Assange.
I was just going to say WikiLeaks guy.
Yeah, WikiLeaks guy. Weird.
I couldn't think of it.
Weird looking guy. Probably a sex pest, but
did a cool thing.
Yeah. At least, whatever. So we've had these whistleblowers in the past. Those are some high profile ones. There's also whistleblowers for the drone program. If you haven't watched this movie, please.
Oh my God.
And if you're listening to this, go watch. It's called, is it called American Bird? Hold on. All right. Sorry about all that. I had to look up the name of this documentary because I haven't watched it in a while. If you're watching this and you haven't seen the movie National Bird, you should definitely go watch that. That's another whistleblower for the drone strike program in the United States, which is absolutely a phenomenal movie. My point of bringing up all these people is what has changed. What accountability took place? Especially now, I want you to think about this too. Like, you can start listing stuff. I'm sure people will. They'll come up with like, oh, this changed slightly. This changed. All right. What denotes power in the United States in a capitalist society, right? Like, what is ultimately power? What is an expression, a physical representation of the amount of power that you have in a capitalist society? It's money. Everybody knows this. The more money you have, the more powerful you are, the more things you can do, right?
Or even just capital, I guess, because like money comes out. They hide that in a lot of forms of property and this and that. Right. But like the idea of money, essentially,
capital accumulation. Assets. Yes, capital accumulation is the exact same as accumulation of power in the United States. Yeah. I guess that's the way to say it in one form or another. So, if you can point to any deprecation of power or capital in a meaningful way for any of these whistleblowers that have come out in the past 30 years, that would be great. I would love
Yeah.
that. I will say that I'm wrong. But
I want to see
the reason
that.
the reason I hate that argument that like, oh, he already blew the whistle is that like, yeah, he was in the middle of a deposition for something that actually matters in America.
Yeah.
He was in the middle of a deposition around a defamation case, which would have carried monetary damages, right? And
Yes.
that is what makes the wheels move in America is monetary.
Where it's awesome to win over public opinion, we all know that's cool, but like, what actual material effects is that happening? Is that having on like this company, how it operates? Like, moving forward, all it does is make people go, that was shitty. Like, but there's no real like tangible repercussions for them. Like,
Exactly.
it's just, yeah, everyone knows now, but like nothing comes of it.
Right.
So, and my point on him, I've said it to you before, but like, even if he did do it himself and they didn't, it was from pressure from Boeing that caused him to do it. So
Right.
that's still, I put that on them because
Yes.
he wouldn't have if it wasn't for the pressure they put on him.
Definitely.
But I'm 98% sure he did not do it himself.
Also, for
Like-
people that are still skeptical, see our earlier argument about incentives for CEOs, right? Because like Boeing's not a monolith, right? But there are people in leadership in Boeing. And people in leadership in Boeing, the way that they make their money is if Boeing has a profitable quarter, right? And if they have a profitable quarter, in order to have a profitable quarter, one way is to cut down on the amount of legal expenses that you're paying, right? Like this shit is just like, it's just like 1 + 1, you know, like there you go. There's all the incentive that any of the leadership team at Boeing need to try and come after this guy is that like ultimately he's in the way of them making more money. Boom.
Yeah.
Simple.
That's all you got to do to piss off a company enough to kill you.
And I
Mess
think
with their profit.
Right. I think on like a more like a wider scale from Boeing, unless you had more to add, did you have anything else that you wanted to talk about with Boeing
Nah.
specifically? On a wider like view of Boeing, what's happened there is what's happened, you know, dozens of times, more than dozens, hundreds of times in the past to companies in the United States because of capitalism, right?
Yes.
Like the system of capitalism forces you to focus on profit above all else. And this is the end result of that is social murder, you know?
My only other big connection is I cannot help but combine this with East Palestine, Ohio, the train.
Yes.
There was countless people saying we need more safety regulations. We need upkeep on the tracks. We need upkeep on the trains, and it's severely lacking. And what did they do? Absolutely nothing. They cut staff. They cut the safety people more in the midst of that. And then we see that happen. Okay. We have the FBI investigating the company who owned that barge that crashed into the bridge and took it down. They're investigating them for that exact thing. So it's not like you can say, oh, well, it's just Boeing. This is how this system kind of makes these companies end up acting, because they're getting to a point now where they're so desperate to continue getting those profits that if it comes down to safety, they're like, we never used to cut safety, but you know what, we can't cut our profit, so I guess that goes next. Like, you know, it's not just Boeing. This ties into the way this entire system works, and we're not going to see anything except more of this infrastructure failure if we don't do something soon now. Like we've now seen a boat, a plane, multiple planes, and train. Like, we're watching our entire infrastructure fail just because a few guys want to make some more money, even though every worker is screaming at the top of their lungs, like, this has to happen. We need safety. And they're like, too bad. Like, I need profits. Like, and we can't allow it to keep going that way. Like, we're just going to keep having the same problems more and more and blame it on, it must be this, it must be that. I mean, the fact that people are buying into, it's it's DEI hires. Like,
Uh,
dude, like, especially the boat. It's like, that person's not even from America. Like, what are we talking about? Like, you're totally missing on that. And then people believe it.
yeah, I was going to
Like,
go in a different direction, because to me it's either, to me it's one of two things, and they're both equally as likely. It's either a end stage capitalism where you have the material interests of a ruling class just pushing through to squeeze every dime out of people as possible, or the planes have gone woke, and whenever they detect
I mean,
whenever they detect too many white people on a plane, the software just downs it.
yeah. I mean, that totally sounds logical.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
definitely it.
that, and the fact that, like, we're at this point, we're watching it clearly with our own eyes. More phones, more cameras, more anything than ever, more access to information.
Yeah.
We can watch it in real time, and yet they can still spin it and people will believe it. Like,
Yep.
it's so clear what the problems are. Okay, companies being investigated for ignoring safety regulations, and then their boat malfunctions and crashes. What could it be? Probably anyone who's not white. Like, how do you believe that? Like, in what world does that make sense? Other than people who still have that racism built into them, even if they're not outwardly purposely projecting it, it's ingrained in them that naturally they just think, no, it's got to be that. Like, I don't understand how you could think that unless that's just ingrained in them, maybe. But,
I
like,
don't
how do you
know.
just believe that? The evidence is right there. Like,
I,
and they're like, nah, it's this other thing.
when this like DEI discourse first came up, like my whole thing, argument wise, against people on the right was, because like, look, like we're trying to build bridges here on this program, right? So I'll say this, and
Wait,
I don't think
literally? Like, we're going to Baltimore?
yeah.
Shit. All right.
We're trying to build bridges, so I'll say this, and I know that if there is any possibility that somebody on the right is listening to this and has made it this far in this episode, I will say that, like, they've probably never met a person of the left that they thought like, oh, he doesn't think I'm racist. Like, they think that everybody on the left thinks they're racist or whatever.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of people on the right. Like, I have a lot of friends and family that are very right wing, right?
Yeah,
I
me as
know.
well. Yeah.
Yeah, I
We
know
live amongst them.
we live amongst them. I know that they are not like inherently, at least the vast majority of them, like, aren't inherently racist people, but
No.
they fail to understand things unless you like describe them in certain ways. So if you have this conversation with somebody on the right about DEI and they think honestly that these planes could be being downed by DEI hires or whatever, companies are going downhill because of DEI hires, whatever, like, just have this conversation
they're willing
with them
to kill themselves in that process too, is what they're saying. Like,
right.
they're
But also,
going down with it.
just ask them, like, black people, right? Asian people, right? And they all know somebody, and they're like, oh yeah, he's one of the good ones or whatever, they say. And
I hate that phrase.
you know what I mean?
Ones.
Right?
Yeah,
and
one
I
of the
know
good
this
ones,
is
not
this
like
is not doing
others.
a lot of work for my they're not racist idea, but like, their mind just thinks differently. Okay, so I'm trying to step you through their mind and try to find a way for you to build a bridge with them, right? So they go, yeah, they're one of the good ones. All right, so this is what I want you to think. This is the thought experiment you have to have with them. You say, okay, imagine a job opens up and it's for a quality engineer at Boeing. Okay. And they have 1,000 black people, and no, they have 10,000 black people and 10,000 white people apply for this one job. They have this giant pool of black people and a giant pool of white people. Do you think that they could find amongst that group the highest, most qualified, absolute best black person and the highest, most qualified, best white person, and those two would be the same? Or do you think one would be better than the other? Right? Like over 20,000 people, there's a ceiling for like how good you can be at that job, right? Like you're not Wayne Gretzky of quality control. I'm sorry. Like there's a ceiling you can hit, and it's like these people are all honestly, and out of 20,000 applicants, they're going to end up with hundreds of people where they're just like, these are the absolute best we can pick, right? Any one of them, no better than the other. They're all absolutely fantastic, right? That is what like these DEI initiatives are about. They're about like putting aside any biases and trying to find the absolute best person for the role. And sometimes they'll even say things like, we want 30% or 20% or whatever percentage of our company to be staffed by Black people, women, whatever it might be. And the fact that you are upset by that means that you don't think they can find that best amongst those groups. If they had 1,000 people to choose from, that's the reality of what's happening here. So have that conversation with people on the right, because they all know people in their lives that are of one of these groups that they generally hate. And they consider them like, oh, this is the cream of the crop. So they have a concept of like, some people are better at being my friend or better at being like whatever job than another. Like they have that. They know that. So there's an option for you.
There's that, and I think a lot of it is too that they don't tend to dig deeper on things.
Yeah.
They will get upset about something, hear one right-wing talking point, and then they just regurgitate it back out. And I don't think they always understand even what they're really saying, because it will be people, like you said, that I know they're good, decent people. They mean well. Like I've never seen them actually do like anything racist. But then they just hear Fox News says, oh, well, it's because they wanted to check a box, so they hired someone who wasn't qualified. And to me, that's ridiculous to think that a company is going to say, like, I have this qualified engineer over here, one who knows nothing about engineering. I'm going to hire the one who knows nothing to check a box. That's not how it's working. They're misrepresenting the system on purpose so that it upsets you. Like, and I wish more would understand, like, you can't just sit in that bubble of Fox News, because their goal is to upset you about something instead of what you should be upset at. Like that is how they're good at spinning it. Like they just go, they're mad at this, just redirect it over here. Like that's their goal, is that way you're never mad at them. You're mad at something else or someone else. And if you break it down with a thought experiment, like Craig said, and actually get them to stop and think about it, then you'll kind of get them to like realize some things. But as long as they're just quick reaction of like, oh yeah, this person told me this, kind of makes sense, I'm going to say it. Like you got to stop and think, like, does that actually make sense? You have to be able to get someone to stop and think about it. And typically I found most people on the right are only riled up and screaming and yelling. I mean, other than there's always that 1% that's nuts, but like most of them, if you get them to stop and think, they do mean well. And they're like, oh, well, yeah, I do want everyone to have a chance. Like they mean the right things. They're just falling into this trap almost of like, I mean, I'll give it to them. They're amazing at spinning shit. Like I've never seen anything like it. Like
I said in a previous episode,
through it, I'm like, oh my God, I could have been stuck in that my whole life.
Like, they're fantastic at hitting like the primal points,
and thought experiment is important for that reason.
Yes. I need another, just like last time.
Another smooch.
Another, no, not this. She's gone now. Another humanitarian break to piss, actually.
Humanitarian pause heard.
Yes.
Go for it.
Sorry, Paul.
That whole thing, I don't know if I even want to get into it. I don't know.
What?
It kind of made me want to just spend the last bit discussing that, of like how to identify what types of conversations you should be having, of like, when is the time to post something that is just like, here, I'm going to post this thing that is going to just ruffle feathers and get a rise out of people. And when is the time to just calmly rationally try to get someone to think. Like, because if you just go at the right sometimes and just say, no, this, don't you see it? Like, that's just going to piss them off and push them further.
Right.
But I don't know if we need to spend time on that or not. It's just with it just being the holidays, touches close to home.
Yeah.
Because it was like 15 verse 1 on Sunday. So
yeah,
that got real fun.
Everybody's political journey is different, of course. But
yeah,
like the sooner, so like my thing with people on the right, and I've had some success with this more than usual in the past couple of years, is like they're much more clued into materialism than we on the left give them credit for. It's almost like innate, but it's easy to take advantage of from the right. You know, like they can. The people that are messaging on the right are really they're really great at like identifying a pain point and then blaming it on the wrong answer.
yes.
Right? Like they'll blame wages on like illegal immigrants, which look, I'm going to take like the Bernie stance in 2016 or 2017 whenever he said it. That's absolutely correct. Like one of the reasons why wages are suppressed in the United States is because of immigration, right? Whether it's illegal immigration, H-1Bs, like whatever. But that's not the solution. The solution isn't stopping the immigration. The solution is like understanding who that benefits and stopping them from lobbying our government to make things the way that they are, right? So like I think I had this conversation with you last week sometime when we were talking about like how open we were talking to a right winger. You and I, actually, I remember this now. I'm going to bring this up, and we're going to leave this in the podcast.
Talking to a right winger.
Yes, somebody. All right, I won't say necessarily a right winger, but you and I were talking to somebody.
I think I know
who said that they would be voting for Trump, and the reason why was because like Democrats lie. Like they both want the same end result. Republicans and Democrats was this person's argument. They both want the same end result. And the Democrats would lie and hide it, but the Republicans were open and outright.
Yeah, as if that's true.
Right. And I can't remember the context in which they brought it up for the Democrats, but they brought up immigration for the right. And I was like, if you think that there's ever an opportunity for the Republicans to actually crack down on immigration and reduce it to zero and deport all of the illegal immigrants, if you think that's ever going to happen, you're crazy. You're like absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
Because all of the people
they are the ones that benefit.
Yeah. All of the people that donate to Republican campaigns, like these giant companies, they rely on that labor. You know, like,
yeah.
That's
Who do you
something
think is out there in California on the farms, like doing actual farm work these days? Do you think it's like a bunch of white immigrants from Scandinavia doing it?
Right.
From that immigrated 100 years ago? No, it's not. Like
it's not your like buddy Paul down the road.
Yeah.
You know,
like, no, that's not who's doing it. Like,
no.
And that is how they make so much profit off of that. It's the same as when they do it in other countries. Like, the most famous one I think enough people should know is bananas. Look what we did just for banana prices in South America. Like, so if you think they're going to do it there and not in our own country while they know immigrants are coming over, like those immigrants, they just want to make money from working because they can make more here than they can wherever they're at. And they might have a safer life. They might have a more comfortable life. And so that's their goal, which to me is like, oh, why are you hating on that? Like, that's why we all came here. But like, they're out there doing that work for you. Like, they're feeding you. And then at the same time, you're like, I hate them. It's like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Hold on. Like, you're happy when they feed you and prices go down, but you're not happy when you realize it's them. Like,
that's
it's so confusing that, like, that's why I think it's important to realize, like, sometimes you do have to push back and get angry, but sometimes you just have to get someone to stop and think about those points of, like, and just ask questions. Like sometimes it's that simple of like, they'll say that point. You say, do you think that really affects this? Or like
Yeah.
sometimes you can lead them right into it. And I feel that has more effect for me leading someone to the answer than me just saying, this is the answer. Usually they're like, I don't believe that shit. Like,
Yeah.
it's kind of more so like just feeding to their human side too of like, do you really in your heart like feel that? Because I
Right.
also notice a lot of people on the right tend to be very Christian and tie themselves to those morals. And then, like, if you point it out angrily to them, they'll be mad. But like,
Yes.
if you ask the right questions and you go,
Yes.
okay, so because I know a lot of people will say, oh yeah, just like Jesus did it. That's just
Yeah.
gonna piss them off.
Yeah. Don't do that.
But if you ask them like, oh, does that feel right to you? Like when that happens and this causes this, and like leading them to realize it always
Yeah.
has more of an effect because then they have the aha moment. You're not telling them what to think because I don't want to tell them what to think.
Yeah. And just to like expand a little bit on what you said, I think that reality, like people that talk to both sides in this country, like you and I do more than most, I think, um, what you tend to realize is like what you're describing there, it comes down to the fact that like they're less emotional. They're really keyed into like the material aspect of
Yes.
what's going on. So people on the right, like you can, when you're trying to get them to change their stance on something, you ask them questions like, what do you think that benefits? Like who's getting the good end of this deal?
Yes.
You know, in every step of the way that you go, and eventually it leads them to understanding that they're getting fucked by companies, not by anything else, right? Because they just get there like naturally through like materialist ways. Whereas when you have that same type of conversation with somebody that's more liberal, that might already kind of be on your side in certain ways, but you're trying to push them further, there's like a bigger emotional difference that you kind of have to overcome.
Yeah.
You know, it's less material and more emotional. I don't know if you're picking up what I mean, but it's just like
I am. I hope the audience does.
I know it's a really
I
kind of
pick up
hard
on what you
thing
mean
to describe.
because one side they have their emotions, but when they're very good at like, well, this is America. Like I get up, I put on my face, I go to work. Like this is work, this is business, and they separate that from humanity. Of
Yeah.
like, it's
Yeah.
very much like that show Severance. Of like,
Yes.
they are two separate people, and they're like, well, that's just what I have to do to support my family.
Right.
And I'm like, yes, but what you're doing there, do you not think that also affects your personal living when you leave that job? Like, it's just getting them to think about that deeper, because that's another one. They're very good at that of like, well, that's just what I got to do to support my family. And I can never be mad at someone for doing what they have
Absolutely
to
not.
do to support their family. I'm never going to argue that.
We live in a society,
Like-
Sweaty.
Yeah, like I'm not gonna tell you that's wrong. Like I get it. Like we live in this system. Sometimes you have to do what you got to do to support yourself and your family and take care of them. But it's getting them to realize that just because they have to do that doesn't mean it's the right thing. It doesn't always mean it's the best for everyone.
Right.
Just because they realize they have to do it, they don't have to agree that it's correct. Because like me, I'm still working a job. I'm feeding into that capitalist market, but I have to. Like I need to stay alive. Like I need to feed myself. I need, like I will never argue that. It's just getting them to realize that maybe that system is not as perfect as you think it is.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe the enemies you think are enemies really aren't. Like it's that same idea from the unions of like, well, there's a time where these guys were corrupt. Okay, well, would you rather have no one on your side or some imperfect allies on your side? Because to me, it sounds a lot better to at least have someone on my side fighting, even if they're not perfect.
Right.
Because if you get rid of them, that just means you gave up the fight.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like, well, I'll take the imperfect allies for now if I have to. Like, it's better than nothing.
Right.
And I think getting people to understand that is a good thing. Just get them to stop and think.
And also just like think about kind of tying into that a little bit. Think about like what do you think the average life is for like a board member of one of these giant companies? Like
well, they work harder than any other American. That's how they got where they are.
Right. Like, do you think like they wake up? Do you think like those Instagram stories of them like waking up at 6 a.m. to get into the
Oh my
office
God.
early and working until like 8 or 9
Yeah,
p.m.? Like, do you think any of
totally
that is
true.
even remotely true?
No,
These people are doing
No.
so many drugs.
no.
and,
It's like
fucking
it's like the
off.
video of Zuckerberg promoting his AI, and he's like, "My toaster knows exactly when to make me toast," and it has the voice of Morgan Freeman. It's like,
Right.
yeah,
right.
that's the life that dude's living. He's not working 14 hours a day.
All-
He's waking
all I
up
know
and Morgan
is-
Freeman's making him toast.
Exactly. All I know is if somebody's around me, if somebody's in my company is fucking off from their work and doing some drugs, I'd
Hell
much
yeah.
rather it be like the guy that lives like a mile and a half away from me that I'm kind of friends with, rather than like some CEO out in Minnesota or fucking
Like if we're going to
wherever.
give all the decision-making power to these people, then we can't have them also be doing that.
Yeah, exactly.
Like if you're going to have them have all the power, they can't have all the drugs too.
We know you could've stayed home, just cried and cussed. May all your guns go off if it's time to bust. May all their tanks have time to rust. They got the armies turning bullets into gold. They got the hookers turning tricks into cold. And every time the police kicks in the dough, an angel gas breaks dips in the O. And even if a D-boy flips in my O, it ain't enough to buy shit anymore. Sleep in the doorway, piss on the floor. Look in the sky, wait for missiles to show. It's finna blow, cause they got the TV, we got the truth. They own the judges and we got the proof. We got hella people, they got helicopters, they got